If you've started talking with homeowners, asking if they want to sell their house, and they're like, you give me an offer and you don't know what type of numbers to give them. So you throw something out there and then they're like, nope, that's it, and hang up the phone. If you want to avoid that feeling, most of those people who are on the spot are tire kickers anyway. But once you get to the point where you've built some rapport, you've established that they have a motivation to sell their house, whether it is their health is in decline or they need to urgently move to help one of their kids who recently got divorced, a number of reasons why they could actually want to sell a house they own that's run down, not nice enough to sell in the market, and they need to sell it quick, is if they give you a number, you could say, I don't think that works with the numbers that I'm seeing. So if anything changes, you could actually call me back and I could cash you out in 2 weeks. Or truly, if you think, hey, I'm an investor that definitely needs to get a good deal. It sounds like you might be more suited to sell that with a realtor on the market. That's the pullback method that Tommy describes, helped him make $8,000 on his first wholesale deal. And now that was 7 years ago, but I think it's such a beautiful sales tactic because at the heart of it is transparency. You're not trying to motivate somebody to do a deal. You're trying to find somebody who is motivated and genuinely wants to do a deal. So this is the podcast for 10xing your income, replacing your W-2 through wholesaling real estate, a strategy where you get paid for finding a rundown house. I've helped people close 10,000 deals in all 50 states with the software platform I created, which is a marketing tool for house flippers called DealMachine. Tommy, welcome to the podcast. So when was your first wholesale deal?
My first wholesale deal was 6 or 7 years ago now.
Okay, got it. What were you doing before you started wholesaling 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah, graduated college in 2017, went to University of Dayton in Ohio, and I became a home inspector with my dad. I'm one of 5 kids, and he's always been a home inspector. He also did property preservation growing up. So I joined just kind of the blue collar workforce, helped him out in his business that he owns.
Sounds like things were going great. Why'd you want to do wholesaling?
Well, I mean, I was getting paid a little over 30 grand a year, 23 years old, and wanted to make more money. I mean, I was young, ambitious, and wasn't really patient, still not very patient. So my uncle put me on to Bigger Pockets at the time and started learning about everything real estate. So I was like, okay, how does a broke 23-year-old start making a lot of money? And wholesaling kept popping up. And I was like, okay, that's the way to move out of my parents' basement. That's the way that it's going to change my life. And over the years it has.
Did you really live in the basement?
Yeah, I lived in my parents' basement.
Oh, hopefully you got some light down there. My parents had some small windows, but it was helpful.
Yeah, they just built a new house and it was actually really nice. They had a pool and everything. So sneaking out the back door and bringing people in, it was doing that whole thing still. So it was fun.
Well, good thing about a basement is it's very cool in the summertime.
Absolutely.
So if it's hot, that basement stays cool.
Absolutely.
We don't have basements here in Texas anymore. I grew up in the Midwest, big basement people, but we have no basements in Texas. It must be hard soil or something.
I got you. Are you from the Midwest? Are you from Indiana?
St. Louis. Yes, sir.
Oh, St. Louis. Very nice.
St. Louis, Missouri.
Very cool.
Well, so anyway, you got out of the basement. So I'm assuming you've upgraded your living space. What's that like today?
Yeah. So, I mean, now 6, 7-ish years later, we have a full wholesaling company. So we've got 2 acquisitions people. We got a dispo, we got a TC. We're doing right around 15-ish contracts a month. We have a couple fallouts. We're closing about 10 deals a month on the wholesale side and have bounced around. I did the whole house hacking thing twice, renovated a few houses for me and now my now wife. And living that way, kind of going house to house and still trying to figure it out as I go.
Got it. So how much did you make on that first wholesale deal?
Made $8,000. $8,000. I didn't know. I kept hearing assignments, but I thought assignments was just the word for wholesaling in general. So, and the first title company I asked them if they did assignments, and they said no. So I thought that was normal, and so I double closed my first, I think, 10 deals or so. So I had to raise transactional funding, had to do both sides, and I just thought that's the way it worked. And once I met my business partner, he's like, "No, dude, that's not how it works," and then started assigning everything.
Got it. So where did you find the seller that wanted to sell their property at a big enough discount that allowed you to make, $8,000 from just finding it?
I was pulling lists from ListSource at the time. So ListSource was big back then.
That was big back then. Yeah, you
really,
paid
really
like
big.
a cent a lead or something like that.
It was a lot.
Filter all the data. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty expensive. And I started off with postcards, and the postcards didn't really work. I was never really that consistent. I always say I was like a half wholesaler, I was marketing every now and again. Every time I would kind of regain that energy and be like, oh, I remember I wanted to wholesale, send out some marketing. But I remember listening to a Bigger Pockets podcast. I mean, this will kind of show how long it's been. They were somebody was on there talking about the new marketing method, texting. So texting was just being introduced, and I was busy building my dad's home inspection business, and I was like, that's it. That's the one that I'm going to be able to do. It's lower barrier to entry. I can do it probably from my phone. And it came from an absentee owner list and a text blast from, at the time it was called Lead Sherpa. You probably heard of Lead Sherpa. We used that for a couple of years.
And that was when text messaging was very popular. It's not nearly as effective anymore, right? There's been a lot of regulations and also just spam filtering that prevents
Yeah.
that from being so effective. So what are you doing now for your marketing?
Yeah. So for years, we were 75% texting, a little bit of cold calling, and now we swapped it on its head. We're 90% cold call and 10% of like niche texting. We'll stack some data and do that whole thing, and maybe do some very, very nichey things where we're handwriting them. But other than that, mostly cold call.
And so cold calling, tell me about what do you say on the phone when somebody picks up?
Yeah, so we have two types of cold calling. So the first cold call that we do is outsourced. So we have cold call centers, mostly Egyptian cold callers that'll plow through those lists for you. But then what we'll do is we get pretty nichey with our data. We use a lot of REI SIF stuff. I'm sure you know Tyler and those guys. So once we get really nichey lists and data, probates, we'll skim those records daily. We have typically a junior act or somebody on our team that's on a dialer. So when you answer the phone, you kind of go off a script, but you got to have an elevator pitch ready, right? You got to let them know who you are, what you're calling for. So right away, I'd say, "Hey, is this David?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, who's calling?" I'd say, "Hey, this is Tom with Legacy Homes. I'm a local real estate investor here in Columbus. Was driving by the area, saw your house. I was wondering if you'd be interested in a cash offer on your property." They know who you are. They know what you do. They can understand what you're calling for.
Okay. And is it very stressful? Like, do you feel like the Egyptians they're stressed when they're making those phone calls and nervous about what people might say across the country like that, across the world?
Um,
Like,
Maybe a little bit. I mean, the more stress on them is just like, can they plow through all the phone calls that they have to make that day anyway? So what
how
we
many do
teach,
they have to make in one day?
I don't know about a day, but maybe I don't want to butcher it, but I mean they're making like 10,000 dials every week or so. It's a lot. They're plowing through those phone calls, and they're reading from a script. So what we get the question on a lot is, okay, well, my cold callers aren't getting me qualified leads, or they're not taking it farther than what they should be. The reason you hire a cold caller is literally to make sure your lists are skip traced properly and you have the right people. So you're literally just trying to get a hand raise because you're paying those people $5 an hour, maybe less, and then someone like you are going to get them on the phone and build rapport, tell them who you are, tell them about your company. You don't want the cold caller doing all that. You're basically just verifying all the things you did with your data and your skip tracing was done correctly.
So, do you feel like the Egyptians are as effective as your other method of cold calling, which was U.S. based?
Absolutely not. I mean, as far as
Okay.
like the spray and pray method, yes, but for really nichey stuff, so we're calling less people on the in-person stuff, but we know that that system's a little bit more targeted, and if they do answer, our sales pitch is a little different than somebody calling from across the world just from a script.
Right. Well, how come you have the people call from across the world? Why don't you just invest all in the United States based callers?
It's just too expensive.
Mm.
Just being able to plow, so be able to kind of have two business models working at once, like the spray and pray, and then more targeted is kind of the way we do it. And also, somebody that joins our team as like, let's call it a junior act, or they're learning how to be an acquisition. It's typically more of like an internship job where they're learning the wholesaling, they're learning the insides of the business. So that's also a little bit of cheaper labor as well. So we try to keep those costs lower.
So let's say one of your junior acquisition managers in the US, in Ohio, where you live, right? That's where they're actually coming in the office.
Yep.
All right, cool. So let's say they call somebody, they want a deal and they want to do a deal and they set an appointment to go to the property. Well, what happens next? Does that junior person go alone or do you go with them?
No, we'll send one of our acquisitions team members or myself, and then we'll go there. We'll talk to the seller. We'll take pictures. We'll try to bring a contract and get it locked up right there. Or even before that, if it's a good enough lead, we'll try and lock it up over the phone virtually. and then the first touch point, maybe a home inspector. But you got to kind of feel out what kind of seller you have. Is it somebody that needs to meet in person, or is it, because you can do this business virtually? A lot of people have that mindset that you can't. But some sellers are really old school and they want to meet you in person. So we have that flex business because we do. We're in our own backyard. We do probably 75% virtually because we can do more deals that way. But we also do set up appointments and meet people out at their house.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, break it down a little more for me, if you will, because a lot of people are listening to this that haven't done a deal before. So they're thinking about this going on their appointment, right? So you don't just kind of walk up to the door with your contract, but you guys probably build some rapport. And like, what types of things do you do or that you find are important to do during that phase, at
Yeah, I
the
mean,
house?
I would say, I mean, just taking it all the way back to the beginning, I mean, I would try and dress a little bit presentable. You don't have to do a suit and tie by any means. You don't want to go overboard, but maybe have a t-shirt made of your brand, maybe have a business card ready, and shake their hand firm, and then walk in the house and say, hey, what's going on? And then as you're talking to them, build rapport, ask them if they have dogs, like any little thing that you can piece together that you can relate to them outside of the house is really important. So I know one deal we did, my mom has like 6 wiener dogs at home. The seller jumped out of the car and she had wiener dogs pop out. So for the first 10 minutes of meeting them, we just talked about wiener dogs, talked about their kids, all that stuff. And then we were like, oh yeah, like, can we walk through the house and look at it? So try right away to build some sort of personal rapport. And then after that, it's going to be a lot about, okay, why are they wanting to sell? What's their motivation? What's the condition of the home? Make sure you have a cheat sheet that you can bring, especially if you've never done this or rehabbed a house. Make sure you have some sort of cheat sheet. What's the roof look like? Take a picture of the roof. What's the siding? What kind is it? What's the condition? What's the windows? So all those things are going to matter. Now, we always tell people too, as a wholesaler, you don't need to overthink it. You don't need to know perfectly what rehab costs are going to be, but you need to be able to work backwards and understand the costs or the deferred maintenance items that a rehabber is going to look at, because the person buying your wholesale deal is typically going to be a flipper or somebody doing the burr method, right? So you got to be able to understand their mindset, the cost, the components, and at the same time, be able to relate personally to that person and build a relationship.
Right. Well, I was just going on an appointment with a friend here who graduated college and wants to get into wholesaling. We
Nice.
went to this guy's house. He'd owned it for many years after his mom passed away. So things were deteriorating. And she was focusing on the house. And he said something about his garage I was like, well, why didn't you sell it before now? And he said, well, his garage was filled with 1,500 collector's plates. And then she kind of breezed by it. And I was like, well, now we need to double tap into that because obviously that was sentimental to his mom or his dad. So he showed us all the plates and we spent like 10 minutes on that. So the house is a house.
Yep.
It's going to have repair costs, but the guy who owns the house is the one who decides who he'll actually sell that to. So this guy was about 70 years old, I would say. We looked it up on DealMachine. It tells you all the people
Awesome.
and their age and the family members and all that. And I was trying to tell her, I was like, really focus on him more than the house, because he probably doesn't need an extra $100,000, right? If he's 73, I mean, obviously this house has been sitting there. It hasn't been that urgent for him to sell it. They had collector's plates, right? That's worth a lot of money. So I was like, he might take less if he just thinks he's really helping you out, new person trying to do good, etc. So just try to get to know him. So it sounds like you guys build the rapport as well, more so than exactly what the house is, going to be needing repairs on.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, we were just doing a sales training at our office, and the sellers are going to make their decisions based off of emotion. If you go in there and you're just talking logic and you're talking numbers, and like, if we tell them right away, especially on the phone before you even go to the house, if you're looking for the highest and best price, you're better off putting this house on the market. You're not going to get that with us. But if there's other things that are going on, if you need to stay in the house for an extra 30, 45, 60 days, if there's certain deferred maintenance items that you have to do, if you don't want to put any money into the house, we are that option. So you got to figure out your value proposition to these people and then play on the emotional side of what's really going on. If they're only talking numbers, you probably haven't really figured out what the true reason is they want to sell. And not everybody wants to sell, especially at a discount. So you can't force somebody to do that.
What are some other tips from your sales training that you could share on the podcast?
Oh man. I mean, So one of the things that we talk about too is the emotional side is really important. The motivation is the biggest part of the phone call. So if you guys are jumping into price right away, which is really easy to do because it can get awkward, it can get scary. So the seller's like, "Who are you?" It's like, "Okay, well, you called me. What's your offer?" And it's like, "Oh, well," and then you throw out a number, then you're done. But you got to be able to skate around those questions and figure out what their motivation is. So if you're not talking to them about motivation and the situation for 10, 20, 30 minutes, they may not be motivated at all, and you might just want to move to the next deal. It's okay to do what we call a takeaway as well. You don't have to always offer. You don't always have to end with a yes or a no. You say, "Hey, maybe we're not the right fit for you guys." And then if you say that, they'll be like, "Hey, well, we could be." So there's a lot of cat and mouse that goes into with sales.
Yeah, I actually like to say, hey, I don't think that works with my numbers, but if anything changes at all, let me know. I can cash you out in 2 weeks,
Yep.
and I appreciate your time today. And typically, they'll never let me get off the phone until they say, well, no, 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 no. What would work, you know? And so that's also kind of a takeaway. It seems like it's similar
Yeah.
to what you're describing there.
Yeah, and if people are kind of bullying you and they're like, and they won't get off of the price thing, well, you called me and make me an offer. And it's like, well, if you can
Right.
give me 5 minutes of your time and you can kind of give me a virtual walk through the house, I can probably give you a pretty accurate offer. No, I don't have time. It's like, okay, well, if I'm looking at the area right now and I can maybe assume the worst, I can offer you anywhere from 50 grand to 200 grand. So you give them this giant wide range that, like, obviously one's super low, one's kind of middle, and they'd be like, I would never take 50 grand for my house. And they're like, "Oh, well, it sounds like you may have a number in your mind. Can you give me a few minutes of your time so I can actually give you an accurate offer for your house?" And sometimes that'll get it. And if somebody's trying to bully you a little bit, sometimes you got to go right back at them. Some people like that. There's a lot of different people. Matching tone is big. A lot of little things matter.
For sure. Well, where do you want to take the business from here? You've had a lot of success. You just had a baby. Congratulations. You just turned
Thank you.
30. You're spending time at home, which is the whole reason why most people that I talk to start a business. They want to spend more time with their family or more time doing things they want to, less
Yeah.
time working. So you've kind of achieved that. How does it feel?
It's pretty great. I mean, coming from a home inspection business, I'm one of five kids. Most of my brothers, so I have two younger brothers. They both now invest in real estate, and my parents now invest in real estate. My mom quit her job as a teacher of 30 years. She sells all my flips. So we also flip houses, and we got about 85 units in our portfolio as well. So we kind of have this whole vertically integrated business, but it all stems from the wholesaling side, the lead gen, and then being able to exit it however we want on the backside. But it's fun. I mean, I'm definitely wired as an entrepreneur. So as much as I love the idea of being able to stay home and do nothing and just collect a check, it's not really how I'm wired. Now it's a good option to have and be able to say no. And like today, I stayed home with my son while my wife went for a run. That option is great. But being able to build a business and have people build a career under you, change other people's lives, to me is kind of the way I like to look at it now.
Speaking of changing lives, like, do you do any coaching for new investors, or is that more of the mentorship when you got a new junior acquisitions person?
So we do a little bit of both. So one, yeah, I mentor people across the country. We have a community platform program where we mentor people across the country how to wholesaling and how to flip. Because I do have a business partner and we wholesale and we flip at a high level, so we split it out. And then anybody that wants to come work for us, I mean, that's kind of our big thing is, hey, if you come and you pour into us, we're going to pour into you just as much. Like all of my team members either have flipped a house or they're buying rentals. As long as you've been with me for about a year, like we're going to help you raise capital. You can buy the deals on our board. All of those things are available for you because you're part of the team.
Got it. Where could people find you on social media to maybe learn a little bit more about you or being mentored?
Yeah, social. I'm mostly on Instagram, Tommy Harr 05, YouTube, Tommy Harr as well, and then realsidecommunity.com is our community, our platform to where if you want help, would love to have that conversation. I'll hop on a phone call personally with you.
Awesome. Thanks again for sharing your success. Very inspiring that you've achieved this much even before 30. Well, actually, yeah, all the way leading up to 30. So just wanted to say thank you for spending your time with us today.
It's been a blast, man. I mean, coming into the business, I mean, man, it's been 8 years since I came into the real estate and learning about REI and wholesaling, and DealMachine was the first thing. I mean, a lot of the first things you hear about. And it's kind of full circle to be able to build a relationship with you guys and be on the platform. So thank you so much.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. We've been around 8 years too. So that was about the same time frame.
Sounds about right. That's awesome.
Thanks, Tommy. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, dude.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.